Yongbei always believed in the quiet kind of love. The kind that didn't shout across rooms, but whispered in shared routines, in small glances at the dinner table, in the way his wife always folded his shirts. 13 years of marriage had built something dependable, solid. But dependable, he realized, wasn't always the same as fulfilling. His days were structured: morning coffee, a quiet commute, emails, meetings, silence, repeat. Evenings were dim echoes of what once was: polite conversations, muted TV shows, her attention divided between work and the kids' school forms. They still touched, but barely. A kiss on the cheek before bed. A hand on his arm if she passed him in the hallway. But intimacy had thinned into routine. He missed being seen. Young girl came in like a contrast he hadn't known he was missing. She was vibrant, a new intern in the same department. Curious about everything. She asked questions, not just about work, but about him. "What's your favorite scent?" she asked once while pouring sugar into her tea. No one had asked him a question that pointless and personal in years. It startled him, and then it stayed with him all day. It started small. They laughed often. She'd linger at his desk to talk about podcasts, or send him memes at midnight. He told himself it was harmless, friendly. She was just young, full of energy. But he couldn't ignore the way he felt when her name lit up on his phone. How his heart beat a little faster, how he kept the brightness turned down so his wife wouldn't see. The first time they touched, really touched, it was accidental. They reached for the same pen during a meeting. Their hands brushed. Her fingers stayed there for a second longer than they needed to. She smiled. He swallowed hard and looked away. That night, he couldn't sleep. He began to study her without meaning to. The curve of her neck, the way she curled her lip when she was thinking. Her perfume, light, citrusy, lingered after she left a room. He started noticing the way she laughed at his jokes, how she leaned in close when she talked. And she noticed him noticing. At home, things were shifting, too. His wife seemed more tired than ever. Distant, distracted. Their conversations had been reduced to logistics. What time is the PDA meeting? Did you pay the water bill? Can you pick up cereal? Even their silences weren't companionable anymore. They just sat beside each other, eyes on separate screens. Yongbei didn't mean to start comparing. But he did. The brightness of one woman's presence against the faded gray of his reality. He hated himself for it. He tried harder at home, planned a dinner, bought flowers, but it felt forced. She thanked him with a quick kiss and went back to her laptop. The flowers wilted on the kitchen table without water. He told himself he was just lonely. That was all. Anyone in his position would feel the same. Anyone would crave a spark. Then came the day she asked if he wanted to grab a drink after work. "Just as friends," she said, her tone playful. He hesitated for half a second before nodding. That evening, they sat at a dimly lit bar, sipping beer and sharing stories. She leaned close when she laughed. Her knee touched his under the table. He didn't move away. She told him about her dreams, about a past relationship that had left her jaded, about how she found men her age dull and impatient. "You," she said, "you actually listen." He felt seen, and the feeling was intoxicating. On the ride home, his wife called to ask if he was okay. He lied and said he'd stayed late to help a colleague. Her voice was flat. "Okay. See you at home." That was it. The next morning, young girl brought him coffee, exactly the way he liked it. "I remembered," she said with a wink. He laughed, but his stomach twisted. That night, he dreamt about her. Not in a sexual way. Just her, sitting beside him, her head on his shoulder, her hand in his. He woke up aching. He started staying later at the office, claiming deadlines. They'd take long walks during breaks. Share meals. She told him things he hadn't told his wife in years, what made him angry, what scared him, what he missed about being young. In return, she gave him her trust, her attention, her eyes. One day, she hugged him. No reason, no explanation. Just a hug that lingered, soft and warm and loaded with everything they weren't saying. He froze. Then he hugged her back. She didn't let go immediately. When she finally did, she smiled softly. "You needed that," she said. He drove home in silence, guilt clawing at his chest. But that night, when his wife climbed into bed beside him, he turned away. Not out of anger, out of confusion, because a part of him was still holding on to that hug. He started writing things he couldn't say, drafts of texts he never sent. I think about you too much. Delete. I wish I met you before. Delete. I'm scared of what's happening. Delete. His phone became a confessional, his thoughts spinning in loops. She noticed him pulling back, asked if she did something wrong. He shook his head, laughed it off, but the tension hung between them like fog. He told himself he could stop any time, that he hadn't done anything truly wrong. But he also knew it was a lie. Because when she smiled at him now, it filled a space that had been empty for years. Because when she looked at him, it was like she was looking straight through the layers of politeness and duty into something raw and real. His wife asked him once, "Are you happy?" It was late. The kids were asleep. He didn't answer right away. He said eventually, "I'm tired." She nodded and turned off the light. But he wasn't tired. He was unraveling, and he didn't know how to stop. Yongbei told himself he wouldn't let it go further. Whatever he felt was just a phase, a reaction to stress, a blip in an otherwise steady life. But the days kept folding into each other, and each one brought a new reason to lean closer to her. Her voice had become part of his daily rhythm. Her texts came like clockwork, witty, thoughtful, sometimes flirty, always welcome. He started noticing how often he checked his phone when he woke up. Not for work, not for the family group chat, but to see if she had messaged. Usually she had. "Good morning, old soul." He'd smile, like a teenager, and reply with something clever, then hide the grin on his face before walking into the kitchen. His wife had started asking questions. Subtle ones. "You've been quiet lately. Work okay?" He nodded, kissed her cheek, and changed the subject. She didn't press. He hated that she didn't press. The connection with young girl grew deeper, slowly, but without pause. They didn't need to try. They just clicked. She made space for his silence. He gave her room to be vulnerable. It wasn't physical, not yet, but it was intimate. The kind of intimacy he hadn't felt in years. When she looked at him, she wasn't seeing a husband, a provider, a father. She saw him as a man. They started having inside jokes. A shared look during meetings. Code words in their texts. Little things that built a private world only they understood. He began to live in that world more than his real one. When his wife made dinner, he found himself comparing it to how young girl remembered he hated cilantro. When his kids laughed at cartoons, he'd remember how young girl said she hated laugh tracks but loved real humor. His mind had started to drift, and he didn't even fight it. He found reasons to message her late. Work advice, song recommendations, funny videos. The topics didn't matter. It was the dialogue, the constant connection, the way she responded like she'd been waiting to hear from him. She once said, "It's weird how you make me feel calm and nervous at the same time." He read that line 5 times before replying. There was a moment, quiet but loud, when he knew this had changed. She told him she'd been thinking about him. Just that. No explanation. He didn't ask for one. He replied, "Same." After that, there was no going back. He became more deliberate with her. He remembered what color she wore when she looked happiest. He brought her favorite coffee without her asking. She noticed his cologne had changed. He didn't tell her he'd picked a new one because she once said she liked bergamot. At home, he started drifting. He wasn't unkind. He was present, but only in body. His mind was always somewhere else. His wife asked if he wanted to plan a trip. He said he was too busy. She said she missed him. He gave a tired smile. Guilt didn't stop him. It just dulled him. Young girl opened up one night, told him about her fear of being alone, about how people always left. He told her he wasn't going anywhere. That night, he dreamed about holding her hand in a dark room, not speaking, just being. He woke up feeling hollow and full at the same time. He started confiding in her, too, about his father's silence growing up, about his fears of being invisible, about how being responsible didn't feel like enough. She listened without interrupting. She told him he mattered. It hit harder than it should have. They hugged again. Longer this time. She pulled away slowly, her fingers grazing his. No one said a word, but something had shifted. He began to justify everything. It's not cheating if we haven't done anything. I'm not happy. I deserve to feel alive. It's not her fault. It's mine. I let it happen. He built a wall of half-truths to protect the thing growing between them. She sent a voice note one night. Her voice was soft, quiet. I wish I didn't feel this way. But I do. He played it twice, then deleted it. But the sound of it stayed in his chest. His wife started noticing. He could see it in her eyes when she looked at him, like she was trying to remember something. Like she was trying to remember who he used to be. She brought up counseling. He said it wasn't that bad. She asked if there was someone else. He said no. He wasn't lying, technically. Not yet. Young girl, and he began spending more time outside of work. Always casually, always in public, always with some excuse. But the way they looked at each other said everything that wasn't being said. They touched more often, light touches, innocent enough to explain, intimate enough to feel dangerous. A hand on the back. A brush of fingers. Once, their hands stayed clasped for a moment too long while crossing the street. Neither let go. He felt addicted to her attention. Her approval made him feel seen. Desired. Young. The contrast was sharp. At home, he felt like wallpaper. At work, he felt like a secret someone was eager to unwrap. He told her he couldn't handle the guilt. She told him she wasn't asking for anything. I know what this is, she said. But they both knew it was already more. He started fantasizing about leaving. About a new apartment. About waking up next to her. He never said it out loud. But in quiet moments, he let the thoughts sit. He imagined telling his wife. The look on her face. The kids' questions. The house, half empty. It scared him, but not enough to stop. He wasn't the type of man people suspected. He was careful, calculated, polite. No one would guess. That made it easier. And worse. He wrote a message once. In his notes app, I'm falling for you. He didn't send it, but he kept it. Just in case. She started ending their conversations with sleep well. He knew she meant, think of me. He did. Every night. He became quieter at home. His wife tried harder. Made his favorite meal. Sat beside him on the couch. He smiled, thanked her, then checked his phone when she wasn't looking. One night, young girl said, if this hurts you, maybe we stop. He said, I don't want to. She looked away. Me neither. And that was it. A decision without being said out loud. They weren't just talking anymore. They were choosing each other in silence. Yongbei knew the next step was coming. He could feel it. So could she. And neither of them turned back. Yongbei told himself the line hadn't been crossed yet. Not really. As long as nothing physical happened, it was just a connection. Emotional, yes. Intense, yes. But still deniable. He held on to that like a shield. But deep down, he knew it was fragile. One more moment of closeness, one more glance held too long, and it would all collapse. It started with her hand in his. No build-up, no warning. They were alone, the air between them thick with everything unspoken. She reached out, fingers brushing his palm, then resting there. He didn't pull away. His breath caught in his throat. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. The moment stretched. It felt heavier than it should have, loaded with permission. After that, the touches changed. No longer accidental or playful. Now they were deliberate. His hand resting on her back when they stood close. Her thumb grazing the inside of his wrist. Every touch lingered. Every gesture invited more. He told himself they were still being careful. That the world hadn't noticed. That made it feel safer, somehow more justifiable. She kissed him the first time. It wasn't dramatic. Just quiet and real and immediate. 1 second he was talking, the next her lips were on his. Warm. Certain. His instinct was to step back, but he didn't. Instead, He kissed her back. Not fast or desperate. It was slow, full of restraint that didn't last long. The kiss turned into more. They stopped pretending. The tension they'd buried beneath months of just talking surfaced all at once. His hands on her waist, her breath catching in his ear. They didn't speak while it happened. There was no need. Words would have only complicated what already felt inevitable. Afterwards, they sat in silence, both knowing nothing would be the same. He ran a hand through his hair, not sure what to feel. Guilt arrived slowly, creeping in like fog. She watched him, waiting for him to say something. He didn't. Instead, he stood, straightened his clothes, and said, "I shouldn't have." But he didn't leave. They met again, the next week. Then again the week after that. The second time was faster, easier, familiar. There was less hesitation, less guilt. The shame didn't disappear, it just dulled. He began rationalizing more. It's already happened. What difference does it make now? I can't stop. He began lying more frequently, inventing business trips, working late, turning his phone face down, deleting messages before he got home, creating a second email. He'd never done that before. It made him feel both sick and exhilarated. His wife noticed the distance but didn't have proof. She asked if he was seeing someone. He denied it instantly. His voice didn't shake. He was convincing. That scared him more than anything, that he could lie that easily. His moods shifted unpredictably. He was either glowing or withdrawn. His wife chalked it up to stress. Young girl, on the other hand, fed on the moments they stole. With her, he laughed more. He felt seen, wanted, desired. But sometimes he saw a sadness in her eyes, like she knew how temporary this was. She never asked where it was going. Maybe she didn't want the answer. They started taking risks, meeting in places that weren't as hidden, staying longer, leaving hints they hoped wouldn't be noticed. They talked about nothing just to stay close. She told him she didn't expect him to leave his wife. He believed her, but a part of him wondered if she wanted him to anyway. He started comparing the two worlds more clearly. The quiet meals at home where his wife talked but didn't ask. The frantic moments with young girl, breathless and fast and filled with tension. At home, he felt numb. With her, he felt everything. He didn't know which one was worse. There was a night he looked in the mirror and didn't recognize his own reflection. Not because he'd changed on the outside, but because he didn't flinch when he thought about what he was doing. He didn't cry. He didn't break. He just stared, and then went to bed. He caught himself thinking about her constantly. In meetings, in traffic, during dinner. Sometimes he'd text her from across the room at work, just to see her smirk. Their connection wasn't just physical anymore. It was everything. He shared secrets with her, thoughts he never voiced at home. One day, she said, "This is going to hurt eventually." He nodded. "It already does." But neither of them suggested stopping. They'd gone too far. They were in it now for better or worse. He tried to be better at home, tried to reconnect. He helped around the house more, started complimenting his wife again. But it felt performative, like he was playing a part. The moments lacked weight. His wife noticed the sudden change, asked if something was wrong. He said no. She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. Young girl once told him she hated the secrecy, that it made her feel disposable. He said she wasn't. He meant it. But words weren't enough. Not when she had to hide every glance, every memory. They were living in moments that didn't belong to them. Borrowed time, every time. He started drinking more. Not heavily, just enough to sleep without thinking too much. The guilt sat in his chest like stone. Heavy, constant. But it never outweighed the pull toward her. Eventually, they didn't need to plan. Their routines formed around the affair. It became part of the day. A normal thing. He hated that it felt normal. He wanted to feel something bigger. Maybe shame. Maybe joy. But most days he just felt numb. He caught himself wondering what it would be like to get caught. If it would be a relief. If the truth exploding would free him from the weight of pretending. But the idea of hurting his wife and kids pulled him back. He wasn't ready to be the villain in anyone's story. So he stayed in the middle, not ending anything, not confessing either. Young girl asked him once if he loved her. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think I'm afraid to."
She nodded, not surprised.
She didn't say it back. He told himself he was managing it, that he had control. But one night, he found himself driving past her place without meaning to. Just parked across the street, engine off, staring at the light in her window. He didn't go in.
He didn't call.
He just watched. Then drove away. Something had shifted inside him. He wasn't sure what he wanted anymore. He just knew he couldn't go back to who he was before her. Not completely. Not honestly. And the worst part was knowing she felt the same. Yang Bei started losing track of which version of himself was real. The husband who smiled over dinner, or the man who memorized the timing of young girl's breaks to steal a moment with her. His thoughts weren't split anymore. They were merged, a constant loop of what he had and what he wanted. The lie wasn't something he was maintaining. It had become his environment. He didn't sleep much. Every silence in the house echoed louder now. His wife had stopped asking questions. Not because she trusted him again, but because she'd grown tired of trying. Her eyes no longer searched his face for answers. She'd started to move like someone living next to a ghost. She was still there, but the warmth had gone. He had taken it with him. Young girl never demanded more than what he gave. But her restraint had started to feel like pressure. The more she didn't ask, the more he felt pushed to offer. Not because she forced him, but because the quiet hurt more than any confrontation would have. She smiled through it, but he saw the doubt creep in. The affair had stopped feeling exciting. Not because he didn't want her anymore, but because desire had turned into dependency. She wasn't a thrill.
She was an escape.
And now he couldn't breathe without her. He told himself endings could be clean, but this one wasn't going to be. She had started withdrawing subtly. Shorter replies, longer silences. He asked if something was wrong. She told him she didn't want to be a secret anymore. Not for the sake of being wanted. He said he understood. But he didn't change anything. He wasn't ready to destroy his family. That wasn't an easy decision.
It was a trap he had built himself into.
If he stayed, he'd keep hurting young girl. If he left, he'd wreck a life he'd spent years building. There was no version where someone didn't bleed. He began crafting the speech in his head, the one where he came clean, where he sat across from his wife and told the truth, not just about young girl, but about the years of distance, the emotional drift, the emptiness he'd been too afraid to name. But he never said the words out loud. He kept rehearsing instead, always one step from confession. Young girl eventually stopped trying to hold his hand when they met. He noticed but didn't say anything. The closeness faded in small increments. The pauses before touching. The hesitation in her voice. One night, she said she'd met someone new. She didn't lie to hurt him. She said it gently,
carefully,
like she was asking permission to save herself. He told her he was happy for her. He wasn't. He felt gutted, like the only space he had left to breathe was closing. But he couldn't stop her. She deserved more than stolen hours and empty promises. They didn't say goodbye. There was no dramatic ending. Just less contact. Less everything. Eventually no more texts. He deleted the thread, but not the photos. He kept them hidden, buried deep. A reminder of what he had and what he lost. Home didn't feel like home anymore. His wife moved around him like a roommate. They still shared a bed, still made dinner, still exchanged the necessary words. But the love had gone quiet. Not dead, but faint. She had started to rebuild without him. He considered ending the marriage. Not for young girl, but because staying felt like lying every day. But guilt made him stay. The kids. The history. The fear of being the one who broke everything. So he stayed. Present but not whole. He started going to therapy on his own. Quietly. No announcements. Just an attempt to understand why he let it happen. Why he needed someone else to feel seen. Why he could love two people and still feel like he belonged nowhere. The therapist asked hard questions. He didn't always have answers. He thought about young girl often. Not with regret, but with an ache that stayed under the surface. He didn't reach out. She didn't either. She had moved on. Or at least she tried to. He went back to being dependable, routine, quiet. But there were cracks in everything now. His wife smiled less. His kids sensed tension. The home he stayed to protect now felt like a place full of shadows. Sometimes he wondered what would have happened if he'd chosen differently. If he had told the truth early. If he'd left when he first thought about it. If he'd fought for something real with young girl before it was too late. But time doesn't rewind. It only reveals. He didn't try to replace her. There was no next affair. No flings. What he felt for her wasn't casual. It was a fracture in the timeline of his life. He'd loved her. Maybe not in a way that could survive reality, but in a way that mattered enough to haunt him. He saw her once months later, briefly, across the street. She looked happy. Not ecstatic, just content. She didn't see him. He didn't call her name. He just stood there, watching a version of peace he could have been part of, and then walked the other way. At night, he lay next to his wife and wondered if she still loved him. If she forgave him without ever knowing what exactly he'd done. Maybe she didn't want the truth. Maybe she already knew, in the way people know things they can't prove. He stopped trying to fix what couldn't be undone. The damage was already part of the structure. All he could do was not make it worse.
He didn't write about it.
Didn't confess in journals. But he carried it. Every day. The memory of how easy it was to fall. How hard it was to climb out. How a single decision, made in a quiet moment, could echo forever. That was the price. Not just losing her. Not just hurting his wife. But knowing that he was no longer the man he thought he was. And maybe never had been.